many people are still in stealth about what they're coming out with. You'll see some of the entertainment sort of applications, video and games, but there'll be more things that help people to do things in totally new ways. Whether it be, again, in the commerce vertical, in more broad applications. If you think of something as simple as mapping and navigation and heads-up displays, that sort of thing. It's a whole very, very large range of applications that are being developed at the moment. If you want to experiment with something which gives you a feel for where the market's going, I'd suggest talking to the guys at Microsoft and looking at some of their demonstrations. They're initially focused on the enterprise market because it's the right place to focus right now, and it's more tolerant of where the hardware is today. But they've got a much bigger vision for where they're taking things long term. Oh no, it will definitely be a replacement for smartphones, but it'll take until 2017, 2018 for that start to take off. But that's what we expect. Any other questions?
So I have actually a question for Matt. So Matt, it seemed like you were referring to creation of these virtual reality worlds as almost being like a filmmaking undertaking.
It exactly is, today.
So that seems really shocking to me, because when I think of it kind of a constructed world that's, you don't know where it's going to take you. You're just kind of creating, a sort of a bubble. And I don't actually see how that would translate from filmmaking into that constructed world. So say something on that, please.
Well, sure. I mean, I don't want to split hairs. There are CGI worlds, right, which we're seeing, with games and apps, which we're seeing. And then there are video-based experiences. What we're trying to do, and where we see the puck going on the creative side, is toward a convergence, right? And we call it playable video, right? This notion that you can shoot a video in a different way. You can have an app that will do things or enable things that are different inside that video. Activating an object, doing more immersive experiences, being able to link seamlessly to other videos. We're just starting to explore that, but what excites us is that conversation is actually happening. That it's not, or I should say it's happening in one room, as opposed to a bunch of people in Southern California talking about one thing, and a bunch of people in Austin and Northern California and other places talking about another. And to see that happening together makes us feel like it's going to accelerate rapidly. But your point's a good one. There's got to be this convergence and this mixing of game, of presence, of video to make it feel like it's really something special and different than just being in a cool location and looking around you. That's where we are today, but that's where we have to go tomorrow.
Hi, this is for Matt. Regarding gaming and VR, you mentioned there was some workshops or tools that you're providing for filmmakers in VR, but are those open also to storytelling in games as well? Or is that something that like Samsung offering?
Well, we started with mobile video, right? And we felt that, and that's our service is called Milk VR, right? It's a video service that lives inside of a Gear VR device. So right now what we're doing is supporting that through video-based challenges. Obviously our partners at Oculus are very focused on the game space. I know they've done things like Game Jam and other initiatives that are similar in character. But we're really focusing on getting this video service going and using that as the kind of the easiest point of consumer adoption, or the most seamless connection to what people do with their mobile phones. So the answer is not no, but the answer is today we're really focusing on how we support video creators and video filmmakers.
The other question I had was, do you see a point at some distant time in the future where smartphones will basically, the way we use them today, will be completely obsolete, and when do you think that will be?
I have no idea, right? You're talking to the creative and strategic executive at an engineering company. I mean, that's not my focus. My focus is on storytelling and supporting this. I would be completely outside of my league to even venture a guess. Sorry.
Hi. Most of the slides were focusing, this is Tim, on the display side of it, and I think which one you touched about a little bit about the input side of it. So can you elaborate more about the current and the future trends of input from the
Yeah, absolutely. The input piece is incredibly important, and there are a broad range that we've looked at. We've looked at pretty much everything in the market. The obvious ones are controllers, and that's where a lot of folks are starting, whether it be something on the side of the device, handheld control, and so on. And that's probably best for VR in a lot of ways. For AR, I think it's a little harder because you're dealing with the real world where you're looking out of it and using your hands and using a control for that. You can do it, and it works now. Long term, we're not sure if that's we're going to win. Then you move on to things like eye tracking and gaze tracking. So, for instance, I mentioned Tommy Palm's company Resolution Games. They've got a solitaire game where you pick a card by looking at it for about half a second. So it's a nice simple example of how you use gaze. Then you get to the hand tracking, which we think is really interesting. One of the challenges with hand tracking with folks like, say, Leap Motion are doing it, Oculus acquired a company, the Microsoft guys are doing it, is you've got to get the latency down to where hands are quite difficult things to model, to track, they don't have a lot of features. You get occlusion, where you can't see something behind something else. But it's doable, and the latency is coming down. That's going to be a big part of it. One of the areas we're most around voice input, it's almost as good as human in terms of, and I was actually looking at some of the stuff with Watson, with IBM recently, and what you can do with that is quite extraordinary. So I think speech will definitely be part of the natural language process. And then you move into the positional tracking, so figuring out, okay, I'm standing here, I'm reaching out, what am I touching? And so tracking where your body is, where your skeleton is, also will become important. But again, that needs more sensors in the device to be able to get proper 3D mapping. And it's, again, the simultaneous localization and mapping, slime, that sort of thing, to get presence, particularly with AR, will become increasingly important. So we don't think any one method is actually going to win. We think that the holy grail of where things are going to go is going to be a mixture of voice, hand, and eye. But get those three systems working in context. If you think about what we're evolved to do naturally, you look around the world, you touch things, you hear things, you talk to things, that's what you do. So for AR to realize its true potential, from an input point of view, those are the three key technologies.
Yeah, I'm Roy. I'm with newsbubble.com. I am a 360 video content creator, and that's what I'm doing here now. I'm wondering what your opinion is as far as the prosumer level content creator, as opposed to someone who's using like I'm talking sub-$1,000 system as opposed to the like $3,000 or more for the GoPro 360 or the John VR or something like that, and how this is going to affect the expansion of mobile VR and mobile VR and AR.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely on point in terms of the price points for what you need to be able to do proper 360 spatial video. You've got guys like Jaunt at the high end, where they just took in a very large amount of funding in the last week, and they're very much aiming at the Hollywood market, the professional market, and there are a few other hardware manufacturers we've seen doing that. But then you've got folks like GoPro, where they're already experimenting with that sort of thing, and they're working on the next stage of how they take their approach to the market and bringing it down to the prosumer market that you're talking about. I think the critical thing for becoming really mass is going to be actually where Matt was starting from in terms of the consumer piece, not the cost.
Well, the other side of the brain is right. I mean, you said it best, right? There's, I think, hardware, the ability to capture moving video in 360 is accelerating rapidly. What we're trying to do specifically is your indie, which I already spoke briefly about, but the notion that independent creators will have access to a market, will have access to mentoring and feedback, will have access to equipment in some cases, depending on what the challenge is. We think that's, and most of all, that distribution, feature distribution inside our service. Those are the reasons why we built it. It's not just a way to give people an outlet, it's also a way to, again, crowdsource ideas and solve some of these challenges that we're seeing. Because, I mean, who knows? What's the best way to make a drone video? What's the best way to do stop action? What's the best way to do a newscast? Right? All of these are challenges that need to be solved, or problems that need to be solved. And we think that outsider voices or emerging voices are just as important as the experts or the so-called experts.
Okay, thank you, Tim and Matt. Unfortunately, time's up. And thank you.
Hi. Thanks, Tim. That was a great presentation.
I'm going to spare everybody more slides. Despite our appearances, I'm more of a left-brain person and focused really strongly on content strategy for Gear VR device, which many of you know. There's been some exciting news lately about how we think consumer VR is kind of here. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is content and what we're doing for content and why we think content matters, not just today, but 6 months from now, 6 years from now, and how it's going to help drive people, consumers and creators to make differentiated experiences. So, quick show of hands. How many people in the room have actually tried a virtual reality device? I'm just curious. That's about 50%. That's actually super high. So that's good news. The bad news is that there's probably, 300 million Americans who haven't. So the number one reason why we think content matters is consumer adoption, right? This is not like we're giving you or selling you another TV. It's not a phone that you might have seen networks for or seen content for. VR is a really new thing. And as much as we do with marketing, as much as we do to make great hardware and devices, we think the best way to get people to adopt and frankly stick with virtual reality is some great content. So that's clearly for us the number one challenge going forward. And we're super excited about some of the things that are happening today in the space. The second reason why content matters is, I'll call it democratization. So the cool thing about VR is that everybody is Steven Spielberg and nobody is Steven Spielberg. In fact, Steven Spielberg isn't Steven Spielberg because he's never, to my knowledge, he hasn't made a 360 story, he hasn't made a virtual reality experience yet. So that's a really great opportunity for everybody out there in the world to get involved with making content, but it also presents a lot of unique challenges. So what we're doing is we have a couple of programs that are designed to get individuals making VR content. The first is called Gear Indie, and it's basically a series of contests and challenges. We're trying to crowdsource how people improve storytelling techniques, how they work with hardware differently, give them the tools to make video, to make content, to make games, and we'll see how that goes. We just launched that program, and so a super exciting thing, and again, we talk about democratization. We really see this as a level playing field where we can solve a lot of these problems together. Another really great trend that we're seeing is what we'll call it scale, right? Aside from us announcing a $99 device last week during Oculus Connect, one of the biggest stories coming out of there was that Netflix, that Hulu, that Discovery Channel, all of these people that are professional makers of content whose existence depends upon content, they're leaning in now. So they're investing in channels, they're building apps, they're now starting to get the bug and start to see that there's potential once the hardware, once the marketplace, once the consumer install base comes into focus. So that's a super positive sign for us. Frankly, we thought we would get the Netflixes and Hulus of the world to start making content, but we've been very pleased with how quickly, less than a year basically since we started selling the device, we're pretty pleased with how quickly folks have jumped in and are starting to explore. So again, back to this notion of democratization. We want lots of people to try VR. We think that mobile devices, everybody has a mobile phone, everybody watches video, great place for consumer adoption, but we're even more excited to see so many people starting to actually make content and doing as much as we can to make that ecosystem perfect for them. The last thing I want to say about why content matters is, or the last reason I should say why content matters is differentiation, right? We know that VR is different. You have to put on a headset or wear glasses or something special and unique. But we feel that if we don't advance the medium of storytelling, it's going to get stagnant. Right now, most of the experiences will be a 360 camera. People will shoot around it. You get this state of presence that I call it. That's very different, unique. But we really think it's important to move forward and really start training filmmakers how to make content. And we think that once we do that, we're going to have consumer adoption at even at an even faster rate because the experiences will be native. The storytelling will be something that is actually built and made for 360 cameras. So what we're doing there is we're making scripted series. We have an original series we're making with a company called Skybound Skybound Entertainment. They make The Walking Dead. And we said to ourselves, we want to make a Walking Dead for virtual reality. So we called up the guys who actually make The Walking Dead. They're not making that show, they're making an original series, but I don't want to talk too much about it. It's a thriller, it's going to come out later on this fall. We're very excited about it. But I want to talk to you about the potential for why this is such an important thing on the process side for differentiation. When TVs were invented, the people that made TV shows weren't in the lab, as far as I know. When mobile phones were invented, you didn't necessarily have app developers informing people what their chipsets should look like and how the app should function. What we're doing with Gone and going forward is that we've actually been able to get the storytellers in the room with the app folks, in the room with the hardware folks for the first time. And I think that's really, really important because what they've done is they've informed our folks how to build a better video experience, how to make an app that's going to let these storytellers do things that they want to do. Who are leaning into virtual reality. Here's what you need to do to shoot it. Here's how you now need to go out and make your content that's kind of custom made and tailor made for virtual reality. So again, we don't know where the puck's going in 5 years, what kind of storytelling is going to be out there, but we're really excited by this process, this notion of crowdsourcing, of bringing people in on the creative side, marrying them with the technology, and letting them see where this is going, because I think that's how we're going to get differentiated content. I have a couple minutes left, but I'm going to stop. The last thing I want to talk about is I actually want to give a plug to Michael Abrash. Last week at Oculus Connect, he said, he made a very good keynote, and he said something that really resonated with me. He said, these are the good old days, right? We're going to look back in 5 years and 10 years, and we're going to think, wow, this was when all these interesting things were happening. Tim and Matt could stand up here and say wonderful things. But I really think that's true, right? The ecosystem is just starting to come into focus. Things are happening really quickly. We're really excited about our new hardware, but we're just as excited about the content that's out there that we're starting to see come together. So thank you very much for leaning in. It's going to be a great ride, and we're excited to see where it takes us. Thank you.
And you mentioned that VR is going to pick up around the year 2017 on the consumer side. So what kind of scenarios or killer applications are we talking about? You think it's going to make VR to pick up, whether it's entertaining or any other kind of applications?
I think the easy way of thinking about AR is, if you think about the applications you currently have on your smartphone, it'll be applications